soul, I find a reason.
This Alien franchise, including the Predator franchise, certainly has its ups and downs, hasn't it? I'm not a huge fan of the franchise, but I certainly do love the monsters. And the Xenomorph, yeesh. It probably is one of the best and scariest alien monsters ever, despite this latex monster having a lot of sexual overtones and whatnot. The first movie, Alien, was considered by many to be an artistic masterpiece. Even has one of the scariest taglines and movie trailers ever made. It's not that great of a movie, if I'm being honest. I mean, it's got some scary moments and impressive designs, but what kind of took me out of the movie was when the Xenomorph starts walking and killing off the last two characters. I mean, this thing could barely move, and it barely has any screen time in this movie. I know it's a product of its time, but we moved on since then and have done better. Even its sequel, Aliens, gave the Xenomorphs more flow. I'm sorry, but it is just what it is. But then, this came along. Alien Isolation. This is art. One of the finest pieces of video game art. When I said the franchise has ups and downs, I'm being serious. Alien 3 and Resurrection are certainly not the best movies in the world. The AVP movie is a mixed bag, and Requiem is,
Eat this!
The Colonial Marines.
Hello, my baby! Hello, my honey! Hello, my ragtime gal!
And that's because somebody made one typo. Yo! Are you done yet? I'm almost done. The fans have wanted this game for a long time. And we're about to finally give them what they want. So get that AI finished or you're fired!
You fucked it up!
I'm a disgrace to video game designers and the Alien franchise. So, yeah. If you were looking at this from a movie and game perspective, you could say after the first two movies, it was not having the best of times. But then we finally get this gem in 2014. For a long period of time, it's been mostly action with these alien dickheads, with some horror bits here and there. But now we return to the roots of the original Alien movie, where it's just horror and atmosphere, with a little bit of action salt. And I may not be a fan of the franchise, but I can proudly and boldly say that Alien Isolation is the best entry of the entire franchise. The movies can suck it. What's the story? It's been 15 years after the first Alien movie, and the daughter of Ellen Ripley, Amanda, is searching for her mama. An android, Samuels, says there's a flight recorder unit that's been taken to Sevastopol. They head on over but find that something is just not right. They try to go in, but the explosion causes debris to cut the wire between the two ships and they get separated. She meets up with some survivors saying there's some monster killing people one by one and everything went to shit because of it. Well, more than it already is. Some people are chill while others just want to kill you to survive. There are androids that are a real nuisance, and of course the Xenomorph that's hunting people, including you. So now it's all about trying to get off the station and somehow getting rid of the alien and trying to contact for help. So the game has a good setup, and it's cool to see Amanda Ripley herself. She was only referenced once in the Aliens movie, and now she gets the chance to shine. She obviously wants to find out what happened to her mother, but unfortunately she ends up in hell in the process. And once in a while on the loading screens, you'll find that she is not a fan of being violent. Though, to be fair, just shooting harmless people will make you a douchebag anyways. The game straight up tells you that Samuels is an android. I guess they figured that the whole robot twist in the first movie could have been handled better. I don't mind it as it helped shape the franchise in some way, especially Bishop in the Aliens movie. Samuels works for Weyland Yutani, but he doesn't turn against you at all. He simply wants to help people, especially Amanda. There's a few more characters. Some are decent, some are pieces of crap, or in between. The setup is good, the story is decent, but just like all stories and setups in video games, it's vehicles for the gameplay. Alien Isolation is a first-person survival horror game set in the future! You'll be collecting stuff along the way as you progress through the story, making the journey slightly less difficult. I say slightly because you only got so much to work with. Since Amanda is an engineer, she can actually craft stuff from the blueprints she collects. It's all about getting the right parts to make the thing you want. The parts you need, you can mostly carry up to 3, and you can only collect up to 100 pieces of scrap, which is needed to craft every single item that you make. If you decide to craft something, keep in mind, if you decide to put in the part, there is no way to undo it. It just stays there. Some people might like it, some people may be frustrated, but I don't mind since that it can allow me to pick up an extra part I found in my journey. The items you make can be handy in different ways, like medkit, EMPs, smoke bombs, flashbangs, pipe bombs, which does not kill or dismember the alien for some reason. And there's also weapons, but the caliber must be really shitty for the guns because no matter what you do, none of them can kill the alien. The first weapon in the game is the Revolver, which is a little tricky to handle. What's annoying is that you have to hold the reload button to reload all of your bullets. If you press the button, she'll only load one bullet in and that's it. And when it comes to aiming the gun, you won't have the most precise aiming in the world with this thing. The crosshairs do not close in to make a dot in the middle of the screen. If you want a headshot, you're gonna have to get close to the enemy. The rest of the weapons is fine and easy to handle. Though when you get the railgun later in the game, you're gonna have to stand still to get better aiming, and you can't charge it up forever as it'll eventually fire. Since it's a survival horror game, obviously you would be spending time looting stuff from different places as you move along. The most important element for this game, especially when it comes to the alien, is stealth. Most of the time you will be hiding in this game. You must be absolutely patient and careful. You can hide under beds, desks, through vents, lockers, but you can't just simply hide in the locker. There's a mechanic where you have to hold your breath and lean back if anybody suspects you're inside the locker. When you hold your breath for too long, you'll start losing health, so you better hope to God to leave as soon as possible. You can interact with a few things, like closing doors for a little bit, going on computers to look and hear some stories and get passwords, rerouting power for a specific purpose like turning off cameras, opening and closing certain doors, a few other things. When you get a hacking tool in Blowtorch, you can unlock areas you weren't able to unlock before, but not all of them as there are 3 different levels for these 2 tools. But the most useful tool for stealth you get early on after a few chapters is the motion tracker. It'll help you keep track of your enemies behind walls or whatever, and it'll make a sound whenever someone or something approaches. It'll only track up to 2 or 3 folks on screen though. If there are more than 4 or 5 on the screen, it's pretty much useless. And the vents? Well, it's handy to hide from humans and androids, but the alien? Not so much, because odds are likely that he'll actually get in there to come get you. And let's not forget that they can do that in the movies, especially the first one as well. What enemies are we dealing with here? Some of the humans in the festival will kill you just to survive. If they have guns, they're the ones you should worry about. If they don't have guns, don't kill them. If you do, you're a douchebag.
Hi, Dad.
There is a trophy or achievement where you can beat the game without killing a single human. But you could just create a noise that'll make the non-human enemies kill the humans and it will count even though you are directly responsible for it. That's like hiring a hitman to kill someone for you instead of doing it yourself. The achievement doesn't really make much sense. Next up, there's the Working Joes, which are discount Weyland Yutani androids. Literally. Amanda says it best.
No wonder Seegson is losing the tech race.
They're one of those the bad guys do what the programming tells them to do, which apparently kills humans if they did anything stupid. Yeah, perhaps next time you should not leave everything to robots and AI. WALL-E, Terminator, and 2001 The Space Odyssey showed us what happens when stuff like this happens. Maybe we should just leave 1/4, maybe half to robots and AI. Though 1/4 might sound safer. There's a few times in the game where you are not supposed to attack, and the game never makes that clear. Players could get it confused for the first time and might end up with an accidental game over. There's the humans with guns you weren't supposed to attack upon returning to an area, you were just warning them about the creature, and there are a few working Joes that will not bother you unless you are bothering them. But now, let's talk about the Xenomorph. Get that out of here. This is the real deal, not the fanfiction deal. Though, if you are interested in a Xenomorph superheroine, please check it out in the description below. Hashtag shameless advertising. Hashtag Xenomorph heroine. Hashtag sexy Z. The biggest problem with the original Alien movie is not just the lack of Xenomorph screen time, but the lack of movement with the Xenomorph. When it's on screen, it's just distracting due to the lack of movement. And when this thing does move, it's embarrassing and lazy as fuck. The Xenomorph has a few good and scary shots for sure, but it doesn't feel very natural. Alien Isolation fixes the problems I have with the original Xenomorph at least by 95%. This game makes the Xenomorph scary all the way through. This thing can walk, the animations are fluid, the sound effects are perfect, it feels alive. This latex dickhead monster with sexual overtones has become a terrifying threat that it originally was, if not more. This thing has unpredictable AI and will go anywhere it wants if you are close by. It often turns around in reverse directions, and just like the movies, it moves around in the air ducts. Once in a while, it'll hover above a vent and wait for the right time to strike you. You are not safe anywhere from this thing. Thankfully, you won't see this thing immediately. You'll have time to adjust to the game a little bit before it begins stalking you. You can use your items that'll help you evade the alien, but just like the guns, it's for emergencies only. It's not some dumb monster, it's a rather intelligent monster. Use too much of your tools, the alien will put the pieces together and it'll just straight up kill you. Running is an absolute bad idea with the Xenomorph, as it'll make a beeline towards you, and if you make too much noise, this thing may even start to look under beds and desks. The Xenomorph has a great amount of intention, and thanks to the miracles of modern technology, it gave us a scary as hell alien that moves flowingly that I wish to have in the original movie. And you want to know what makes this even better than it already is? There's 2 DLC missions that takes place in the Nostromo in the first movie. Crew Expendable and Last Survivor. Crew Expendable. You play as 3 different members of the Nostromo trying to get the alien out of the ship. And in that mode, you get to relive the ventilation shaft scene. Oh my god, the ventilation shaft! This will always be scary no matter how many times I've played it. Last Survivor. Fucking Last Survivor. This absolutely fixes every single issue I've had with the third act of the first movie. There's no cat or fighter confrontation in the shuttle, but it doesn't matter in the slightest. With the Xenomorph's AI, flowing movements and mechanics, combining scenes from the movie, especially escaping the Nostromo and blowing it up, I can absolutely say with confidence that Alien Isolation is probably the best licensed video game ever made. Also, bonus points for getting the original cast to return to play their roles. But it is not flawless. The animations and movements of the Xenomorph is an absolute improvement over the first movie, without a doubt. But there's still something that's missing. Those some things, it doesn't walk or run on all fours, climbs walls, ceilings, nor does it climb over or on top of stuff, when it stalks you anyway. It does that in a few scripted animations for when they're like outside the windows or walkways or whatnot. But then again, it probably would have made the game harder if it did that. Still, it doesn't change the fact that it's rather weird considering it did more than just walk or run on all 2 feet in comics, movies, and of course some other Alien games. There's only a couple times where the scripted animations are completely immersive breaking and it doesn't make much sense since they can see you and kill you, but don't for some reason until it's too late near the end. You have ways of scaring the alien away for a short time by explosives, molotovs, and blowing up propane tanks, and even later in the game you get the flamethrower, which is the same one from the first movie. It's a godsend of a mechanic for sure. But admittedly, it's just kind of weird, because in Colonial Marines, the flamethrowers can be used to kill xenomorphs, but here all they do is just scare it away for the time being. Is the flamethrower in Fuel not powerful enough to do that until decades after the first film and this game? I never understood this. It doesn't stop there. Pipe bombs cannot kill a xenomorph? Also very weird. I mean, it could blow up a Terminator's body, which is made of titanium, and yet all you could do is just scare an alien away with a bad acid boo-boo. And yes, the xenomorph bleeds acid into this game if you or some jackass decide to hurt it, but it doesn't go to the floors at all, it just leaves stains. When in the hell are we gonna get past this video game limitation? I have no clue. There is only one chapter, which are called missions weirdly, where you are basically making a giant cage with a xenomorph, but it backfires. That's pretty much it. It's not like you could work out some temporary solution to trap the alien for the time being. The most you could do is just lock doors for less than a minute before they disappointingly open again. There are missions and times where you don't have to deal with the monster, which does allow the air to breathe, but in those times you are just fighting the androids most of the time. If you want to do some gunfight with aggressive human survivors, well, tough shit, because most of the time that latex dickhead is just waiting to come down and fuck you. Engaging in gunfights with the violent survivors in this game, if you have enough ammo, is like finding a diamond in the rough. But it's probably just a nitpick because obviously it's not about killing other enemies, but rather trying to survive and avoid as much conflict as possible. I think it would have been nice to have a few optional gunfights without the xenomorph on your tail. But there's always a few survival mode DLC missions for that, I suppose. One last odd thing to point out upon replaying the game, you'll notice there are times where the xenomorph just stays in events and doesn't come down unless you get to a certain point in missions. He won't even come down at all unless you make a noise or some aggressive survivor fires a shot at you. When it comes to the save system, there's no autosave. Well, kinda. The game saves if you finish a mission and or access a different location of the Sevastopol station, but aside from that, the majority of the time, you will need to use phone booths to save your game. This is classic Resident Evil shit right here, minus the ink ribbons. This I have zero problems with, but I will say that when it comes to replaying, well, there's one issue. You can replay certain chapters, but the problem is, if you decide to play and finish the game on the hardest difficulty, Nightmare Mode, you will replay the missions in that difficulty. You can't even switch the difficulty in the options menu at any time. What's even more weird is that in lower difficulties you can switch difficulties, but on the hardest one, you can't. Why in the hell can't we have an option to select the difficulty after we select the chapter to go back and replay? I mean, in Nightmare Mode, that's when things get really serious. There are far fewer supplies in Nightmare Mode, you get killed in 1 or 2 hits, there's no HUD, and fighting enemies is never a good idea even after getting a breather from the Alon. Unless you have no choice or a couple certain spots will give you a break. Those who want to replay the game but not on the hardest difficulty may have to reset the game and play it all over again in hard mode instead of Nightmare, unless they get a kick out of Nightmare Mode, which I don't. Freaking fantastic. And we come into another issue of the game that I know can be a negative, which is the backtracking. The backtracking in this game doesn't feel beneficial at all when you are having to deal with an unstoppable alien that one-shots you and that there are no good checkpoints aside from phone booths used to save your game. The Resident Evil games have backtracking, but there it works because the enemies don't kill you in one hit, there's items to go back and collect, some enemies are slow and easy to manipulate, and hiding isn't important. In Alien Isolation, backtracking can make things tedious since you are spending most of your time hiding and slowly making your way to your goal. So when there is backtracking, odds are you could spend 10 or 20 minutes in a certain area because you are too busy with everyone trying to kill you and you have a limited amount of stuff you can work with. This game is pretty much hide and seek of death. The game. Sci-Fi Space Edition. This game requires patience, which is one of the secrets of the Furious 5.
Wait for it.
So yeah, the game captures the magic of the original movie quite well in the gameplay department. But it's not just the gameplay, but the graphics as well. I mean, okay, it's 2014. The graphics got better because we're in the PS4 era. But there's a bit more to it, to the graphics and designs, as it actually helps enhance the game and its setting. The original movie has retro-futuristic technology which gives the movie its charm and its setting. Outdated? Yeah, but the thing is, you don't really care if it's outdated or not. There's just something so charming, so pretty, so unique about retro-future tech. It would have been so easy to just make things as modern as possible in this day and age in Alien Isolation. But the folks behind this game have a lot more passion and love put into this game. They implemented retro technology into this game and they go further beyond here. The computers, audio recordings, video cameras, monitors having VHS static, the weapons, and the posters. They all capture the retro-futuristic feel of the original movie. I mean, the future's got hot food vending machines. Wait, the Japanese has that already? Why can't we have vending machine hot pizzas? And do they taste as good as gas station pizzas? The game even has callbacks and fan service from the original movie here. It all looks so beautiful. It's oozing with charm. It makes the setting unique. Even the loading screens, and when you boot up the game with the 20th Century Fox from the 70s and 80s, it all has VHS video quality. And with the Nostromo DLC missions, I really love the attention to detail where the crew used a different motion tracker that's pretty much bigger and took 2 hands to live and use that motion tracker. You can't even use it in the lockers. It's different from when Amanda is using it where it's smaller and uses 1 hand. That pretty much tells you in the smallest way that the tech has evolved since the first movie, as it took 15 years after. Now, I should probably bring this up as I have discovered a surprising thing about this game on the internet. There's an actual fictional Twitter page on some unfortunate soul who died before the game got started. It's rather sad and messed up as it's a Twitter of some guy who got the job at the space station and has been sending messages even though there was no way to contact the outside. What's really odd about the Twitter page is that it's the only way to get a password to collect supplies in-game, which is an optional area to come back to that you couldn't access in Mission 2. I don't know if this Twitter page will get deleted or not in the future, but in the meantime, I shall show this Twitter page right here and post a separate video just for good measure so that it won't get lost in the flow of time. You're welcome! The graphics nowadays does its job to be as pretty as hell, but in this game, it's not just being pretty for the sake of it. It also goes above and beyond to recapture the magic of the original movie, both the looks and the atmosphere. Even the music! I know it has some OST from the original movie, but when you listen to some of the original music from Alien Isolation, it makes it sound like the late Jerry Goldsmith composed the music. Well, for the most part. There is a couple of tracks in this game that doesn't feel like it captures Jerry's magic. Granted, there is one out of a few of them which I really liked, but even then, it feels off when you compare it. But that's only a few tracks. This game doesn't capture the original movie by 100% exactly, but 90% or above while improving upon it and fixing the issues the original movie had? Absolutely for sure. There is no doubt in my mind that those who love the original movie will get behind this video game. Even the sound effects really heighten the creepy atmosphere of the space station. Just hearing something moving around in the vents and sometimes having the space station shake around in the uncomfortable silence and eerily music that occasionally plays, especially when you're around the creature in early parts or in the DLC missions. They also fit the retro style of the game and the movie. The old audio quality in the audio logs, the beeping of the motion tracker, And it's probably just me, but the Xenomorph roars, growls, and sounds are the best sound effects of the Xenomorph out of the entire Alien franchise. That said, the graphics does also have its goofs. The cutscenes unfortunately kinda suck. The frame rate is choppy as hell, and sometimes there's even a brief millisecond of blackness whenever there's a cut, and the lip syncing, both in-game and cutscenes, is terrible. Also, the game can have its bugs. And it's rare, but sometimes said bugs can end up getting you killed, like when you finally get through the godforsaken vent scene in the crew expander, as the alien could either jump down at the same time as you do, or as I'm recording this and discovered, he'll charge back towards you before coming back up. Creative Assembly, the company that created this game, they treat it with a lot of respect. And what makes it surprising is that this is their first attempt at survival horror. I don't know how long they took to make this, but damn, it is impressive. And Sega, of all people, made this game as well. So you can remember that Sega is not just for its Blue Hedgehog, but also for creating one of the best horror games ever made. There was gameplay beta footage where it's in third person. It doesn't work. The first person perspective is not only immersive as hell, but it only adds to the creepy factor. It works perfectly for this game. If it was in third person, it wouldn't work as well, and it would be less creepy and way too easy. Resident Evil 2 Remake works well in third person, but I digress. The 2 DLCs within Nostromo isn't the only extra content this game has. There's also Survivor mode. There's only one challenge to take on, but if you buy some DLC, you'll unlock more challenges and characters to play as, each with their own setup. I was gonna make a complaint about how 3 characters in Crew Expendable had no real character traits other than different dialogue, but it turns out they do have different supplies to each character in Survivor mode, so never mind. They all have various time challenges that give you extra points, giving you extra things to do aside from just getting from point A to point B to point C. 2 of my favorites is these 2 where you choose between one side or the other with a unique mission to do with its own reward. Sometimes the reward is different though. You can save, but you have to spend points. And you got 1 or 2 hours to finish it all. Quite different than just having 3 challenges while going through the map. For the most part, you play as different characters that are just doing stuff before the main characters show up. And one of the DLC missions ties into the main characters getting trapped inside. To top it all up, you can have the option to play most of the challenges in endurance mode, where you go through one by one of these challenges in a random order. The upside is that you can keep the stuff you collected and whatnot from the previous challenge in endurance mode, so you better be lucky to have some good stuff for when you eventually have to deal with the android and human enemies, and hope you have enough to hold back the alien. The only downside in survivor mode, especially in endurance mode, is that you can't play all the characters you wish to pick. This is one of the first few survival horror games I was interested to play in 2014. There were 2 games I was curious but cautious of playing. This and The Last of Us Part 1. But oh boy, I was so happy to play those games. People can have their Five Nights at Freddy's, but for me, the only horror I need and want is Alien Isolation. Well, that and maybe some Resident Evil. The most impressive thing about this game is that even though it's not as scary anymore, it's still nerve-wracking to play. With a few other survival horror games, the creepiness rubs off on you after multiple replays, which is still fun, just without fear. With Alien Isolation, thanks to its mechanics, the huge threat the Xenomorph poses, and some well-crafted set pieces, the horror factor is still very effective, even after repeat playthrough. And I just find myself not wanting to get killed by the alien very often. When the alien kills you, especially in first person, it is actually scary as hell when you look at its face as it makes the kill. Also, getting killed by the androids is unsettling as hell. There's always something so spine-tingling when you die in this game, which I have not felt in most other games I can remember. This game is one of the most well-crafted masterpieces I've ever played in my entire life. This is one of the best survival horror games ever made. This is the best out of the entire Alien franchise. It's an incredible piece of art with great gameplay, making the xenomorph scary again, if not even more scary, pays a huge amount of respect, improving upon the first movie, if not the entire Alien franchise. I actually don't mind having a sequel, but it seems highly unlikely though, as we have a freaking mobile game FNAF ripoff and a comic starring Amanda Ripley. It's just whatever. But honestly, an Alien Isolation 2 would be nice to have. And hopefully, if that does happen, they can fix the mistakes and problems I have with. If you are a horror lover and want to get into some horror stuff, I highly recommend this game. If you want an FPS game that isn't Call of Duty and mindless violence, here you go. And this is shameless advertising, but if you want to see a unique concept of a xenomorph superheroine, then check out my fanfiction Land and Kiten. I'll leave it down in the description below.